What is up, everybody? My name is Wayne Felton, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching this. This, for me, is a dream come true. A dream is a wish your heart makes. Oh, we're starting off with Disney right away. What I wanted to find out is, how do I take the things that I've been doing on TikTok for the last almost 2 years and transition them? It's awesome to get to do something completely different. It's the start of something new. We don't need to start with High School Musical. I'd be better off going, I said you wanna be starting something, you got to be starting something. Said you wanna be starting something. How to get over? Stuck in the middle.
I took my neighbor to the doctor with a fever, but nothing she found. Down into the street, they said she had
coronavirus. I'm telling you, it's real. It's getting real.
So just so you understand conceptually how this thing works, every week I'm going to take a concept, like for example, today we're going to talk about January 6th and the insurrection, the terrorist attack on the Capitol, and parse it out a little bit and just kind of Wayneify it, do it my way. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. On the day, a group of radicals performed a terrorist attack intended to stop the certification of an election that their leader lost, because he's never gonna be president, and I'm never gonna be president.
We're never gonna be president now.
They sought to terrorize, harm, and kill politicians they disagreed with. And as they brazenly said all over the internet, as their Facebook Live in the mess, that they were hoping to signal to the entire country that any and all people who disagreed with their view of what the United States could and should be, could be subject to that exact same type of vitriol and violence. Now let's be clear, when Hollywood predicted this would happen and Olympus was falling, the White House down, they assumed there would be a group of Koreans seeking revenge for the atrocities we committed over decades in their country with the help of disgruntled Americans, and that King Leonidas would have to partner with Lucius to make sure that President Harvey Dent didn't die. Who would have thought, though, that the version of that movie that ended up being real was the one in which Channing, Dear John, Step Up, Magic Mike Tatum would save President, blame it on the goose, got you feeling loose. And that would be the more accurate version. Or as Jamie Foxx famously said,
Get your hands off my Jordans.
I mean, come on. We got a bunch of armed white dudes under the direction of an old white dude who clearly doesn't know how to use technology. Because remember, he was paging, and if you also remember, Trump can't tweet. Looking back, it would be easy to center this entire conversation around Donald Trump. And he's kind of at the center of it. And dude got impeached for it. Now, say what you will about Trump, but he's the only president in history to be impeached twice. Honestly, the person at the center of the entire controversy, for me, is Mike Pence. Yes, Mike Pence, the human embodiment of skim milk. And Mike Pence famously said this.
The introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, in that order.
But seriously, as you dig down, so much of what happened in the build up to that terrorist attack was pointed and directed at Mike Pence. A lot of the things that happened were because of Mike Pence's bravery. Let's start with the obvious. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden. We knew it was going to be a weird election going into it because of the pandemic. Side note, do y'all remember when we were having the conversations about post-pandemic? Yeah, me too. The aftermath of the election gave us Trump supporters protesting at testing locations, the Four Seasons extravaganza, Stop the Steal all over Facebook, and all the L's Trump supporters took on TV. Now, it's reported that Trump asked Mike Pence not to certify the election, and he was like, nah.
Hey, you be like, flush me, Jay, flush me. I'd be like, nah.
Mike Pence and his staff were then kicked out of the White House. For some reason, Chuck Grassley starts talking about he'll oversee the certification of the election, and Mike Pence's team was once again like, nah. So Trump started subtweeting Mike Pence like this.
Do not trust her. She is a fugly,
So on January 6th, the day of the certification of the election, Trump does the one thing he's good at, and that's hosting rallies. Because once again, say what you want, but Trump is basically an IG influencer. He knows how to get enough people to show up to his live. He knows how to use the right angles to make himself look successful. And we will talk about this later, but the type of people who showed up to this event are very particular. Too many Jesus flags were out there. It was looking like college game day on a Christian college campus. And Trump got up and ended his whole thing with,
"And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol."
That's the smoking gun, by the way. And walk down they did. They set up gallows to hang Mike Pence and others. They stormed, they barricaded, they broke into the Capitol. They bust the windows out your Capitol. They beat up cops with American flags. They spread poop on the walls. They were hunting for Democratic representatives. They were hunting for Mike Pence. Now, Mike Pence got taken to a secure-ish location and later was told to evacuate the Capitol, but he refused because he told them reportedly that he had a job to do. He also told his security detail, "Y'all aren't the ones driving me, then I'm not getting in that car." And then the event just ended and folks went home. This part actually really baffles my brain. In 2020, the year that we saw people die at protests simply for protesting, these folks stole stuff, stormed, killed, and went home. And the election was eventually just certified for Joe Biden.
Who's the president? Byron. Who? Byron. Say what's up to Byron. What's up, Byron?
Now, of course, after certifying the election, Congress was like, "We finna impeach you." And the aftermath of January 6th has been, como se dice, a dumpster fire. Because one thing we do know about congressional Republicans is when their backs are against the wall, they don't blame it on the sunshine. They don't blame it on the moonlight. They don't blame it on the good time. They blame it on Antifa. And when not blaming Antifa, they treated this the same way they treat school shootings. Told us not to politicize it. And old Trump, who's a lot like Neo said, "I just can't help myself," said this. I'm sure Mike Pence was somewhere like Will Smith, like,
Hang him! Hang him! I ought to shoot you right now.
Trump very clearly thought he could bully Mike Pence into changing the election for him. And Mike Pence stood up for himself. Now here's the crazy thing. Mike Pence may still align with so many of the talking paths, but I think there's a path forward here. And the path forward from this radical, nationalistic, racist, right-wing ideology and identity that causes the act of terror is resistance. The path forward is standing up for the rule of law. The path forward is having these experiences in which things are actually happening against you that fundamentally change who you think you're aligned to. Now, of course, Republicans opposed a congressional committee to look into the attack. Think about this. They literally did not want anyone to investigate the thing that almost killed them. I mean, Juicy Smouye faked his attack, and he was more interested in the investigation into his fake attack than Congress is with the real attack. And the reports that have come out from the investigation have proven why. They helped plan their own funeral. But even deeper than that, I think it's important for us to think about this. Historically speaking, when white people commit atrocities, history asks us to quickly forgive. And this is America. Don't get you slipping though. Yeah, don't get you slipping though. And it shouldn't be lost on any of us that a terrorist attack happened in the United States, in the Capitol building. Like, that's wild. And ever since then, it's been described as everything but a terrorist attack.
There was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes taking videos and pictures. If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
December 7th is a day that lives in infamy. September 11th is a day we're told to never forget. And yet when terror comes from those we deem to be stereotypically American, we're asked to understand why, to parse what has led to this rage, to see this as an outlier, to move forward and to have unity. This tactic is called gaslighting. You understand that? Gaslighting. I mean, I've personally felt crazy over the last year trying to understand how something so incredibly historical could have happened, and I watched it, and people are acting like it didn't happen. And I think the path forward is not only radical understanding and radical acceptance, but radical resistance. We'll be right back. I'm super excited today as we're having this conversation, to have a mutual TikToker, April Ajoy, who, fun fact, the way that I was introduced to April was through TikTok and watching her participate in Black Lives Matter protests and watching some of the vitriol that came her way, only to then later find out her story, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. So April, thank you so much for being willing to come on and chat with me.
Of course, Wayne. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So I'm going to do like the awkward thing and say, like, give us the 90-second, like who are you and how did we get here?
Okay, well, the 90-second version is I grew up a preacher's kid, very conservative Christian home. My dad was an evangelist. We traveled the world. My dad would preach in different churches all over the world. I would sing beforehand, and sometimes I would sing on Christian shows like the Jim Baker Show and TBN and Daystar. And we were also very political. And so I would like campaign for Mitt Romney and all of these things. And I thought Barack Obama was the Antichrist because that's what everyone around me told me. And now I make videos making fun of white evangelicalism and calling out toxic Christianity and attending Black Lives Matter protests. And now they all think I'm a demon. So that's the short version.
I was gonna say, like, so you're going to hell in a handbasket, and
yeah, I am leading the charge to hell. Actually, I'm taking people with me. So beware.
I don't even want to know what your DMs look like, and the craziness that probably gets said to you. Mm-hmm. Just the parts of your story that I know, like, not only do you kind of stand up against the conservative Christian nationalist bend that you were a part of, but like you just bucked it completely. So what was that catalyst moment for you?
Oh, there were so many catalyst moments. I think when I talk about my story, a lot of people ask, like, what changed you? Like, what was the one thing? And it really wasn't one thing. It was a lot of little things over several years. And I think the catalyst, like, I was already kind of heading out the door of republicanism, like, but Trump comes on, which I think he was a catalyst for a lot of people, because there were things that he would say or things that would come out about his past, like Stormy Daniels, the Access Hollywood tapes, things that I thought there's no way he's going to get the Christian vote now. Like, surely it, like, they my whole life, like morals, like the way they went after Bill Clinton and the way they went after all these people who were immoral. I just thought, we care about morals. So they're going to care that this guy is super immoral. And not only did they not care, but they justified it and celebrated it and started telling people, oh, he's just a baby Christian. Oh, you got to forgive. We all make mistakes. We elected a president, not a pastor. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, but you literally elected like a terrible human being, like not a pastor. So in 2016, I voted third party just because I couldn't, I just wasn't there yet. I was still processing and learning and unlearning. But I saw the vitriol that came from conservative Christians just when I said, like, hey, I'm not going to vote for Trump. I'm not going to vote for Hillary either. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of ranked choice voting. So I was like, we need to get rid of the two-party system, which that's another topic. But people, just for me not voting for Trump, thought that I was voting against God's will.
Yes.
And that to me was just insane. That was just when I was like, I need to reread. I just need to reread the gospel. So I started rereading the red letters, and I was like, oh my gosh, we look nothing like Christ. We look absolutely nothing like him. And then I just kind of pulled the string and my whole theology unraveled before my eyes. and then 2020, which is a whole other thing with the pandemic and George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. You saw the videos that I had posted. Like, there would be pastors and worship leaders in defense of a Confederate statue screaming the most racist things towards me and the people that I was standing with. But because I was standing with people of color, I was just dirt to these people.
One thing I've learned in life is that when you join forces with an oppressed group, you become like a surrogate of that group. Right. And then you get to experience the vitriol, the anger, the hatred that comes towards that group. Mm-hmm. With the objective being, if we just do that enough, you'll realize that you don't belong to that group and come back to the right side. Mm-hmm. And so, what I've noticed is, specifically white folks who fight for Black lives, Indigenous lives, people of color, folks who are on the front lines as allies for the LGBTQ brothers and sisters and friends and cousins and them. As you stood in solidarity, you ceased to be white, or you ceased to be rich, or you cease to be male, and you start becoming connected to that group with the expectation being like, they deserve the vitriol. You are getting it because you're standing with them, and you need to come away from that. And I know just watching, like I said, watching you be a part of that was mind-boggling for a number of reasons, one of which being like, I know from a historical perspective, the ways in which Christianity has been used to castigate and tear people down, specifically Black folks. But how different was that for you to experience it? Like, because I'm assuming that you would hear it, the periphery, or you would like the underhanded comments, like the plausible deniability things. But how different was it for you to like experience that explicitly?
I mean, it was life-changing. And I don't say that lightly, because I had always heard of racism. Like, I knew racism exists, but it was easier as a white person to be like, oh, it's just one-offs. It's just individuals, kind of similar to, you know, the church issues. Like, you know, and I didn't even know systemic racism existed, you know, even just a few years ago. Like, I was waking up to it, but just because of my privilege, I didn't have to research it because it didn't affect my life. And I even have a hard time saying like I've experienced racism, because I know it wasn't because of my skin color, but standing there and like feeling it firsthand or secondhand, it was literally like, we just wanted to move a statue. Like, we didn't even want to destroy it. It was so trivial. We had Black Lives Matter signs. I mean, it was in the heat of the 2020 summer. So these were happening all over the world.
Right.
But we had a pastor. I think one of the most telling moments for me was there was a pastor who came and preached at us, like preached a whole sermon about repentance and sin, and preached to our group who were holding signs that say Black Lives Matter. This pastor was preaching at us, and he said, we need to repent of our sins, and that the color of sin is black. And I just was so dumbfounded. And then the thing that shocked me the most was he actually got a lot of backlash for that, because someone filmed him. And then so people started coming at him on Facebook that he was racist. And he doubled down in like a 45-minute Facebook Live and said that it was impossible for him to be racist because he was a Christian. He said, I've never prepared more for a sermon than I did that day. And that was just the gospel that I was speaking. And that was when I was like, American Christianity, white American Christianity is a complete farce.
And then the journey began, right?
Yeah.
What was it like for you to not only internally step away from that, like what has that journey been like? Because I know for me, it has been scary. To step away from some things, and I don't have some elements that you're dealing with as well. So what has that journey been like for you?
It's been very scary and very isolating in some instances, especially before I got on TikTok, because I was calling stuff out on Facebook before I got on TikTok. And, you know, it's one thing when like a random stranger online on TikTok calls you the Antichrist. It's like a completely different thing when it's a family member on Facebook. So I spent the first couple years realizing some hard truths about things that I believed was like, am I crazy? Like, surely my whole life hasn't been a lie. Like, am I the crazy one? Because I had all these people in my community, you know, basically telling me that I was crazy, that I just didn't understand God's will, and that, you know, I was being deceived of Satan. I was just like, I don't think I'm the crazy one here. And I can't be quiet about this, because these people are harming people in the name of Jesus. So, but it has been lonely because my whole life was church. I don't go to church every week anymore. I don't see the same people that come up and talk about how my kids are growing up. And my extended family on my dad's side just blocked me on Facebook. I'm like, I don't even post on Facebook anymore. Like, so it's like, just because I voted for someone different, it like, I can't even be in their life anymore. And that's really hard, you know, like that, like I thought we were family. It's been good and bad and hard and sad and lonely and fun. And like, it's been a lot of things.
I get that completely. And I think there's a lot of people who are trying to who are A, going through the journey themselves, B, also trying to figure out is there hope?
Yeah.
I saw an article the other day, just yesterday, that the Canadian government is nervous that American democracy will cease to exist by 2050. That will be overtaken by some right-wing authoritarian state, which sounds very, very on brand for us at the moment. And
Yeah.
so as we wrap this conversation, do you think that there's hope? Do you see your story as hopeful for other people?
I do have hope in just the sense that I was deep in it and I came out. I do think a lot of it has to do with personal relationships and things that made me have empathy, like my dad dying and my brother coming out as gay. Those were two big things that pushed me towards a more progressive belief system. But this is going to sound super callous, but I think our biggest problem are the older people, especially the church, that are very much holding on to an old way of thinking.
Yeah.
And they're the majority of millennials and Gen Z, and each younger generation is more progressive and more open-minded. And I mean, obviously not all of them, but just in general, I have hope in the youth. I think the youth, eventually they're going to take over and those youths. Yes. So yes, I do think there's hope. And I do think there are people that are changing. I had a family member who was a staunch Trump supporter. We got in lots of arguments. And after January 6th, actually, she called us and said that we were right about Trump and does not like Trump anymore. So there are those. It's just the thing that they're not the loudest, because I get messages all the time from people who think like I do, but all their family, all their community are staunch Trump supporters. And so they're scared to speak out of what they really think because they don't want to lose their family.
That makes
so
sense.
I think there are a lot more people like us than we realize. So yes, I do think there's hope. It's still scary out there.
Yeah.
But I have to hope. I have to hope, or I would just cry all the time.
Well, I really appreciate you and the hopefulness. And honestly, I'm grateful for the TikTok algorithm for showing me you and us getting to connect. And I'm really, really proud of you and your story. And I'm just super grateful that you were willing to come and talk to me.
Well, thank you. I feel the same about you, and I really appreciate what you do and for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so thank you so much for letting me do this. Thank you for believing in my weirdness, as Katy Perry once said.